Hello everyone, let's talk about holiday reading. So if you saw my last video, you know that I am off on my holidays soon. I'm so excited. I leave for a holiday in about a week. So I've been thinking, what books am I going to read on my holiday? And I have kind of a particular way of thinking about holiday reading because there's kind of three different categories. Firstly, there's like kind of your classic really engaging books, so like kind of like dark and twisty thrillers. I feel like they're often like airport reads for a good reason because they're really fun to get into on a holiday, like a book that is just so engaging that keeps you gripped to the page, and it's kind of also slightly easier to read because of that, because it's so easy to get into. It's like so good for a holiday because you can pick it up, put it down, read a few pages, put it down, and then pick it up the next day. And like, it's not like a difficult book to read because it's so gripping. But then there's also kind of the typical summer romances as well. So many romances take place over the summer, and a hot summer holiday is the perfect time to be reading spicy books. So there's also romance reads. And then also, actually, when I go on holiday, I love to bring literary fiction, but like specifically short and sweet literary fiction. So stuff that I've been meaning to read for a while, but stuff that I can read quite quickly. So it'll leave you thinking. It's a little bit more of an in-depth read, but it's still, in terms of page count, short and sweet. So you can read that on a plane and sit there and like really contemplate and really sit there thinking about it. And I just think it's a great time to kind of knock a few books off your list that you've been meaning to read for a while, like especially literary fiction books. So they're my three kind of buckets, like gripping, like holiday thriller reads, summer spicy romances, and then also short and sweet literary fiction. So I have recommendations for all three of these categories for you today. Things that I've read on my holiday before, or things that I think would really suit holiday reads. If you're planning your holiday reading, or even if you're just having some time off work and you want to make your way through a few different books, then these are all absolutely excellent reads. So let's start with the gripping books. These are not all thrillers or like horrors, but they are on the darker side. And I think it's a great time to read books that have darker themes on holiday, because if you are a wimp like me, I'm such a little scaredy cat. I feel like it's hard to get really, really terrified by something or like very creeped out while you're laying on a beach. Do you know what I mean? So the first one that I want to talk about is by far my favourite thriller that I've ever read, and I don't even know if it's actually counts as a thriller because I don't read that many, but to me it is, and it's also one of the best ones I've ever read, and I've actually lost the dust jacket for it, but it is The Push by Ashley Audrain. This book is so good. This is basically about a woman, and she gives birth, she has a daughter, and she's just convinced that something is wrong. They don't bond like how they're supposed to for mother and daughter, and she kind of tries to bring up this issue with her husband, and he doesn't understand what she's talking about at all. She is kind of like not really believed about her feelings about her daughter, and I know that that kind of dynamic has been done before in books, but this one has done it the best. I just really enjoyed this one, and I read it so quickly. It was really gripping, so engaging. The writing style is really good as well. It's like very much like you get breadcrumbs of different things that are going on, and it's paced quite well, so you're like finding yourself just flipping the pages constantly. I think it's a really good twist on that kind of thriller vibe of a book, but it's also got that like literary twist, you know. It's like it is having a commentary on, you know, her life as a new mother and her relationship and all of these other things. So this one is such a good one. So I really loved The Push, and I would really recommend it if you want a very fun holiday read. So next up, moving away from the thriller kind of aspect, but it's still very deeply unsettling book, and I read this years ago and I think about it all the time. It was like very gripping as well, and creepy and dark, and I absolutely loved it, and it is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. Also great for a holiday because it's a very slim little book. This copy, this hardback, is 150 pages, like just under 150 pages. It will not take you long to read, but it is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. This book is all about a girl called Sylvie, and basically she is living in this hut for the summer, kind of out in the middle of nowhere in England, and basically it's an exercise in experimental archaeology. Her dad is obsessed with kind of exactly recreating the way that people lived in the Iron Age, and so there's like they're living there kind of with some archaeology students, but he's kind of doing it as this like very intense hobby and like brings his family along with him. And so she's living there with her parents, and he is very controlling, and it's kind of tracking her life as she's living in this really harsh environment, living in this hut in the middle of nowhere, trying to live as if she lives in the Iron Ages. And it's not very long. I think it's just so well worth the read. It's a great holiday read if you do just want to put something. I read this actually on my Kindle, and I read it in like a couple of hours, and I just really loved it. Just literally read it in one go. I think it's really gripping. I just think it's so well written to have something that is so short, have such a high impact. So I really loved Ghost Walls if you want something a bit creepy and a bit unsettling. So then definitely pick up Ghost Wall. And then the third and final in this darker category is one of my favorite books of all time, so I'm going to put this in every video that I can always squeeze it into, and I've made almost every single person in my own personal life read this book as well, and that is Boy Parts. Boy Parts is by Eliza Clark, and in this book you are following Irina, who is a photographer, and she's also working at a bar. She takes explicit pictures of men, and part of her art is kind of convincing these very average looking men to pose for her and be models for her. And she is also a very special person in the fact that she's quite insane. And I just loved reading this book because you are inside her head, and she is kind of just losing it, always on the verge of absolutely losing it. She gets the chance to try and put on an exhibition of her photographs at this kind of big London event. She lives in Newcastle, and basically it's her big break and her big chance. So she's like very obsessively trying to work towards this exhibition. And you follow her throughout her life, and things are not as they seem. It's very dark, it's very twisty. This book is very similar in themes and like the way that it tells the story to American Psycho. So if you love American Psycho, then I really think that you'll like this. It's American Psycho, but it's if the main character was a woman who lived in Newcastle, and it's so good. I love it. I think it's very referential to American Psycho as well. If you do really like American Psycho, I think you'll definitely like this. It kind of explores a similar theme in similar kind of ways. So those are my three darker reads, very gripping, more dark if you're looking for that on your holiday read. But next, let's talk about fluffy little romances. So summer holidays is the best time to be reading romance books because so many romance books are set over the summer as well, and they often have a holiday in them. And the absolute queen of this genre, the person we have to talk about first, is of course Emily Henry. I have 3 books of Emily Henry's here, and I've read 4. I've also read People With Me on Vacation, but I don't own that one. Although that one is my least favourite, if you did want to know. So Emily Henry's books are so good. I don't think you'll be disappointed even if you're quite new to the romance genre, because I do think that these books are so good because they give you everything that you want from a romance book, like an engaging, fun, romantic story with twists and turns, but also they often have a slightly more literary leaning style in the fact that they don't only just focus on the romance as the point of tension. There's usually some other kind of emotional character story going on in the kind of background, or like for the main character, the main heroine usually, whether that's kind of a journey of accepting yourself, or a journey of being burnt out from your job, or a journey of grief. There's usually some other kind of emotional impact, not just from the tension between the main couple. But these are all great books, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with any of them. I just think depending on which tropes you prefer is the book that you should go for. If you love enemies to lovers, then do Beach Read. If you love friends to lovers and kind of fake dating, then you should definitely do Happy Place. And if you like more academic or like rivals to lovers, then you should be doing Book Lovers. And also I think you should basically start with the character that you think that you will relate to the most out of these heroines. So to go through them very quickly, Beach Read, we have January and Gus, and they are both authors, and they are kind of enemies, like they don't like each other. They're both authors. January is a author of like slightly more like romantic fluffy books, and then Gus is a like hardline, like literary kind of like dark and tragic kind of author, and they don't really like each other very much, but they basically decide, because they've got terrible writer's block, that they're going to try and write a book in the other person's style, and it's excellent. This is my favourite one out of the whole bunch. I love January and Gus. Then we also have book lovers. So in this we have like neurotic, kind of high-strung, but like also incredibly like successful literary agent Nora, and this book is about her and her rival in the industry as well. Not so much enemies to lovers, but more like rivals to lovers, and this one is very reminiscent of kind of a Schitt's Creek type setup. So if you love Schitt's Creek the TV show, I think you'll really enjoy this one as well. And then we have Happy Place, the one that I read most recently. This one is basically about a whole big group of friends, and they go on this holiday every single year, and it's the best time of their life, and you're following Harriet and Wynne, and they have been together since university. They've been together for many years, and they're engaged, but then they broke off their engagement and they haven't yet told their friends, so they turn up on this holiday thinking to break the news that they've now broken up, and then they find themselves, both of them, accidentally kind of on this holiday and having to pretend that they're still together for various different reasons. So it's got that fake dating kind of side to it as well. Very, very fun reads, an excellent way to kind of dip your toe into the romance waters as well if you're usually more of a literary fiction reader, but they are still very much like contemporary romances, which does lead me on to the next romance recommendation. If you usually prefer slightly more historical romance story, but you still want something that's kind of like light and fun and a bit like fluffy for a holiday read, you don't want to like dig deep into like a historical kind of book, then I have a great recommendation for you, and it is Trouble by Lex Croucher. This is such a fun historical romance book. I've read lots of Lex's books now, and this one I think is my favourite out of all of them. Basically, in this book, you're following Emily, who, when you join her, she is on her way to become a governess for a new employer who is called Captain Edwards, and she's supposed to go and look after his 2 young children. But you very quickly realise that Emily is actually a liar, and she doesn't even like children. She's never looked after children in her life, and it's actually her sister Amy who she is taking the place of, because Amy got ill and they desperately need money. So Emily's whole plan is to arrive at this big house, steal as much as she can, and then get out of there. This is such a fun read, and I really loved the romance in this one because it's slightly more slow burn, and you also have like a very wide cast of side characters that I think all have such a unique touch to the story. If you've been watching me for a while, then you know that I love like a bitter and kind of mean main character. I just love them for some reason, and I also usually love the trope of like people who don't like children, and then like kind of children come into their life, and then they kind of like realize that they're not all that bad. I don't know why, like something about it I just find so heartwarming, so cute, and that is something that does happen in this story. You have Emily, who's just this like mean and quite cutthroat person who just like doesn't care about anyone but her sister, and she will do anything to help her sister, and she finds herself kind of like enmeshed in this wider family, and a romance obviously also ensues. It's very similar in tone and feel to The Sound of Music, so if you love The Sound of Music, which I obviously do, then I really think that you will enjoy Trouble. It's so much fun, and I also read this one in like 2 days so quickly, so that is a great holiday read. And then next up we have a safic read, and this has also got a touch of fantasy in it as well for those fantasy romance readers, and it's one that I very recently read, and it is Honey Witch by Sydney Shield. So like I said, this one is a safic read, and it is also perfect for escapism. It's set on this absolutely magical and beautiful island, and this one is slightly also more historical fiction leaning. It's like I think set roughly in like the equivalent of a like Regency era. So in this book you're following Marigold, and she is on the marriage market, but she doesn't really want to be. She just wants to be running naked under the moonlight and kind of like in the nature, and she doesn't want to be prim and proper and trying to find a husband. And then at the beginning of this book, her grandmother comes and says that she needs Marigold's help, and she wants her to become the next Honey Witch. So Marigold goes to this beautiful magical island that she hasn't been back to since she was a child, and she learns how to be a Honey Witch from her grandmother. And she decides that the price that she has to pay to become the Honey Witch is not really really a big deal because the curse of the honey witch is that nobody can fall in love with the honey witch. And Marigold thinks that she doesn't really care about getting married or kind of having that kind of relationship, so she is very eager to become the honey witch and she wants to kind of escape and live on this magical island. But then, of course, a new character is introduced who is notoriously skeptical about all things magical, and especially everything to do with Marigold, and, you know, hijinks ensue, let's say, and it's a very cute enemies to lovers story. It's perfect for summer. It's all about kind of flowers and nature and honey magic, and it's a very sweet and fluffy read. I would say it's not that much there in terms of substance. It's not going to make you cry. It's not going to really make you feel like so deeply for the characters, but if you want a fun summery holiday read, then The Honey Witch is great. Even if it's not going to be like your next absolute favourite book, it's a very fun and very sweet story. So these are my hot summer romances that you should definitely be reading if you're going on holiday and you want that kind of flavour. But last but very much not least, I want to talk about my literary fiction favourites. So these are all really short literary books, but they also either explore an idea very deeply or they explore a new place, and I think that they're great holiday reads. I love picking up, like, I always bring a stack of short literary fiction for my holiday because I just find something about being away as well is like such a good way of getting through these books that you've had on your list for like years and years often. And I just find, like, for a plane journey or something, like reading a 150-page book or a 200-page book, it's just like a perfect kind of way to really escape. Also have something to like really kind of dig your teeth into and like have something to meditate on in kind of down times when you're traveling around. So let's start off with a book that I actually have read on a plane before. I read it like basically before we even took off because it's quite short and it also even looks like a postcard, and it is Winter in Sokcho. So this book, let me just take a moment for the cover. It's absolutely stunning. I really love the way this book looks. This author always gets the absolute best like books, book covers, and I'm going to bring their second book on my holiday that I'm going on. It's going to be one of my books that I bring for my holiday. But yes, this is Winter in Sokcho. It's short, it's sweet, it's also kind of atmospheric and like a little bit kind of moody of a read, and I think that it's a nice one to have when you've just got a little bit more brain space to dig into, but it will not take you very long. So in this book you are following a young woman. She is French and South Korean, and she is living in Sokcho, which is a small town that's on the border of North and South Korea, and it's often a tourist hotspot, but you're following her during the winter in Sokcho, so like obviously not very like prime tourist season. So she's working at this guest house and she's kind of pretty like lethargic about life. I don't know how else to explain it. But then this young French man comes to stay at the guest house and he asks her, well, they kind of go out on these outings together so that she can show him like the real side of Sokcho, like the real authentic side of this town, because he is an artist. They kind of strike up this very interesting relationship, and it's quite typical in terms of like a literary fiction relationship where it's like they're not really actually speaking to each other very much, but he's an artist and he's kind of drawing her, and one of the big themes in this book is her being seen and like coming to terms with how she's seen by other people. I think it's a really interesting read. It's a perfect kind of length and vibe, I feel, for a holiday read. This is like quite transportive. You really do feel like you're in a completely new place, because a lot of this is being able to see the side of the real side of this town and also the tourist kind of side of it, which is kind of an interesting thing to meditate on while you're on your holiday or like traveling around. Okay, so next up, an author that is, I think, one of my favorite authors, and also just really reminds me of the summer, like, because I think I read both of these books during the summer and I've just absolutely loved them and kind of associated them with summer reading since then, and that is Caleb Azuma Nelson's books. The first one, which is Open Water, and the second most recent book, which is Small Worlds. I really love both of these books. I think they are written so beautifully, they are written so poetically, and they have such a rhythm to reading them. So if you've read Open Water, you will love Small Worlds. I really love both of these books, and I'm not actually sure which one's my favourite. Open Water focuses more on a relationship. It has more of a romance. It's not a romance story, but it focuses on a relationship. Whereas Small World, I would say, is more of a coming of age story about a young man finding his place in the world. It also does obviously talk about kind of relationships in it, but it doesn't focus as much as Open Water on the relationship. So kind of pick whichever one kind of more appeals to you, because both of them are written very beautifully and they just feel very, very powerful as well. Through both of these different stories as well, the Caleb Azuma Nelson like really meditates on similar themes, I would say, about kind of vulnerability and masculinity and growing up and art and music and creativity and kind of just like discovering yourself in so many different ways, like seeing yourself truly and being seen by others. I just think they are such beautiful books. They are so well worth reading. I really love both of these, and also I think they both take place during the summer as well. I'm pretty sure most of Small World does take place during the summer. I just really love these books and they are so good, and also both very short. Open Water is it's under 200 pages. It's under 150 pages. It's like 140 or 130 pages, and then Small Worlds is closer to 200 pages, like just over 200. So excellent reads, so worth your time and great for a holiday read. And then the final book that I really want to talk about is a book that I just don't get to talk about nearly enough, and I just absolutely love this book. When I read it made me cry and I want to recommend it more, and I just feel like I never get the chance to talk about this book, but this is a great opportunity because it takes place entirely in the ocean. So if you are on holiday, you're sitting by the beach, you're doing a lot of swimming, thinking about the ocean, you're on a boat maybe, you should read Pod. So I absolutely love this book. I read this last year. It was nominated for the Women's Prize. I think it didn't get onto the shortlist, which is a crime because this is like one of my favorites from the whole list last year. But Pod is basically, you are following, the back kind of is not quite descriptive. It's like not quite like about what the book is actually about, but you're following a few different sea creatures and it's kind of imagining their life, but it's like a very complex kind of society. It's a few different characters. You're following Iya, who is a dolphin. She's part of a pod, which is where the name comes from, and she suffers from some kind of condition, meaning that she can't hear the other things that the other dolphins can hear, and it kind of causes her a lot of grief, and then she strikes out on her own in the big blue ocean. You also follow some other characters, some other fish and whales and like all these different kind of characters in the sea. But this book really is about community and also climate change and survival. It's so emotional. It's like, I hate the cover of this book because it's not about, it just doesn't seem like it's like representative of the story at all. It's so much deeper than it really seems from the cover. And also it's like so much of it is really based in scientific fact. Obviously a lot of it is taking a lot of liberties about how these animals are living in the ocean, but also a lot of it is very rooted in how we know these fish and animals and mammals are kind of living and communicating with each other and what their motivations are and how they live. And a lot of that it really does like teach, it feels like it teaches you a lot about how they kind of live and survive in the ocean as well. And I just really enjoyed the commentary as well on climate change and like what we're doing to the world and like the human impact of what we're doing to our oceans as well. So important, and also something to remember while we are going on these lovely holidays. So that's the final one on this literary fiction mini recommendation list, but they are all the books I wanted to recommend to you today. There's like 3 very different vibes there, but I also think that it's going to be very different to some other holiday read recommendations that you might be getting. But I really hope that you find something that you will love out of this list. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought as well, because I absolutely love all of these books. They are so much fun, and this is exactly how I would pick my like summer holiday reading list from. So if you are going on a holiday, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful time, and also please forgive me for my probably scatty kind of uploading schedule while I am away, but I will be posting videos and I'm probably doing a vlog as well of my holidays. If you're interested in that, if you like my vlogs, then that is incoming. But thank you so much for watching this video today, and if you've forgotten to subscribe, then make sure you subscribe. Also go back and watch all of my other videos, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!